Early civilized minds took it as self-evident that there were beings who were immortal and were fundamental guiding sources and presences. They can be seen as inhabitants of the collective unconscious, which are in turn expressions of the archetypes. Archetypes are the psychic entities that continue to exist unchanging and unchanged while the momentary individual egos come and go. I love that part. Plato also speaks of a connected consciousness that interpenetrates all human psyches, and he therefore contends that all knowledge is merely a recollection of what we already know and have known since the birth of our individual souls from the womb of the original source form. Continue. Archetypes are the fingerprints of what Jung calls the collective unconscious. They form the deep structures of the mythic psyche. He argues that these mythic structures, archetypes, keep us all connected to primal symbols and memories. These mythic structures then unify all humankind in a primal knowledge whose truths are revealed in the highly interpretive language of symbol and image. These mythic forms are the ever-veiled and eternally revealed wisdom of the collective unconscious. It's everything we're working with. It's everything that is coming through the gene keys to our conscious mind. The collective unconscious, in essence, bonds single cells into one organism whose whole is more than the sum of its parts. All peoples at all times have shared identical images in dreams and stories and spirituality. The details differ, but the story remains the same. We can take this interplay between humans and gods to be the interpenetration between ego, experience, and archetypal factors signified by the gods. Our actions and experiences are constantly shaped and supported by archetypal urges and powers. The Olympian realm is a projection onto the outer world of an inner state, a state that is eternal, unchanging, and a realm of spirit as opposed to matter. The collective unconscious is analogous to the abode of the archetypes, gods. In his purely psychological views, the heavenly realm of the Greek gods is seen as a part of the human psyche, which is beyond time and space and beyond the control of the conscious personality. And so this is pretty much it. But this last sentence is what we're learning right now. We need to not be controlled by this force any longer. We need to, and this is where Kabbalah comes in, because it gives us the ability to go beyond that, to connect to the light, to connect to that which is beyond Zeir Anpin, that which is beyond the belly of the tree of life, and connect to the crown. And I had a dream about that, actually. I was waking up this morning literally with that, which is this Torah portion, actually, but it really is just like you need to connect to the higher, that which is beyond duality, in order to resolve your situation. And that is literally what God is telling Moses this week's Torah portion is, why are you crying to me? You need to connect into a higher realm of source than, and that is, signified by the different names of God. And when we see the letter energies also as building blocks for this universe, then through a certain name, i.e. a combination of letters, we would connect to a certain level of reality. And we need to connect to that realm that is higher than that which we usually connect to, which is, you know, that personal, that which we have a personal relationship with, that God that is like our, you know, that is coming through maybe in the form of our higher self. And so we're invited to connect to higher than that. And this week specifically is like giving us this opportunity to, again, you know, work with the realm of magic, work with the realm of higher consciousness, and become a miracle maker in our own lives through changing our perception and through taking control of these archetypal forces that are no longer really, you know, with the ascension of this human collective, the archetypes need to be cleansed in some way, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. They need to be put into place, basically. They need to be put into place, or we can maybe identify with, you know, the Christ consciousness archetype, which is basically expressed in the central column, and is giving us that balance between, you know, the evil on one side and the good on the other, or the giving on one side, taking on the other, but really this idea of like receiving, desiring to receive in order to share, and in that sense practicing restriction, because the ego consciousness, the body, the archetypes are controlling the shadow frequencies in our human DNA makeup, right? So that would be like the lower frequencies, the frequency fence, and literally that is, you know, what is contained in our DNA, right? It's like that's the collective unconscious that is coming. And when we don't take control, when we allow for these archetypes to control us, then we give away our light, and we empower the collective unconscious that then is creating war, that then is creating more darkness, let's say, or more upheaval in our collective. And so this is really the main teaching, I think, and this is just something that I'm so grateful that Kabbalah is really confirming, that what Jung has been saying and what I've been coming into contact with a few years ago is basically, yes, like the collective unconscious is this underlying DNA blueprint frequency fence of the shadow nature of our DNA when we speak in terms of gene keys, right? And in order for us to move to the gift frequency and move into, you know, like the activation sequence actually is really, really, really powerful. And it's not an easy one to crack when we go from the life's work, evolution, then evolution to the other side, the sphere of radiance, and then purpose. That, you know, pathway of breakthrough between sphere of evolution and sphere of radiance that is where it's at. And that is one of the really most difficult things, because subconsciously we will still be connected to certain archetypal mechanisms that are self-preserving, that are focused on me, myself, and I, and how can I ensure my survival or my family's survival. But in the end, it's still connected to the ego in a way, right? So to break out of that is what is really important. What Kabbalah is giving us is the ability to pause before reacting, pause before giving our sparks away. When we give our sparks of light away through anger, through reactivity, then we empower the collective unconscious. And so it is our responsibility to work with the archetypes, to see where am I, you know, whatever we are, like procrastinating or self-serving, or where do I want praise, where am I not doing things simply for the highest good of all. And that is that breakthrough from like the ego into the soul, and then from the soul eventually into the city consciousness. And what Kabbalah is doing, it is giving us, and what the light, the living light is doing, it's giving us this connection to source consciousness, this like direct access to our higher divine self, come in and help us see more, have more clarity on where we need to be less reactive, where we can take our power away, take responsibility, like empowering ourselves through taking responsibility of these collective archetypes that are running through our blood, that are running through our DNA, and that are not serving the highest good of all if we simply go with what, like through the restriction, we're able to break through to the city consciousness, to the higher frequencies that are stored in our DNA. And I don't remember who sent me that post, but the masculine, again, when we compare it to the Gene Keys language, the masculine part of that fallen Luciferian self would be the devil archetype, right? Samic Mem. And that would be the reactive. And the feminine is the repressive, right? So the Lilith archetype is very much like on the repressive side of things. That's just, what's been coming up through this whole debacle of the last year and a half of going through it myself. And so Korach, for example, was that soul that, or the part of our fallen self that then created the realm of Klipot, right? And so through the actions or whatever is being told in the Bible, that again is a code for our reality, for our software, then this being basically created our hell, created more of the separation consciousness, and gave these archetypal influences on their darkest or densest expression a realm to play. And that's the realm of Klipot. That's the realm of the shells, as you know, they're and the shells in the tree of life are the realm of Klipot goes until Keter, basically. Like, you know, we can always think, oh, we go higher in dimensions, we go towards the light, but we need to actually break through that layer of the realm of Klipot to move to the next higher tree of life, where then Keter becomes Keter of Asiya, Keter of the world of action, then becomes Malkut of Yetzirah, and even higher than that, because the archetypes exist, you know, throughout the Adam Kadmon, the whole tree of life as well, until I believe Keter of Atzilut. And so that will be the journey, but we need to, through the help of the gene keys, just identify that journey, identify where our main opposition stems from. And if we can do that and take responsibility and not allow these archetypes to wreak havoc in our lives, and maybe, you know, sometimes that means going really extreme and going to the edge of your own existence in order to break through and get to the higher levels of like the gift frequencies and the city frequencies. And so with that fallen soul or group soul of Korach, which is, I want to say, these 600,000 that we've been talking about, that's just the densest expression of it. And that could be all humanity at this point, because, you know, I don't see that there is that much separation. But being at that level of density, we now are really at that point of like no return, like, or not no return, like we are at the point of return, sorry. We are at the point of return. We cannot go any further into darkness and separation consciousness. It's almost like there's like a stop, and that stop is through the precession of the equinox, because now we're moving back on the elliptical, back into the awakening and into that, you know, golden age, which is supposed to last 1,000 years. And again, when we understand the Torah literally as our software program for this reality, and every other system, the magic, the Mayan dream spell, you know, the Sabian symbols, everything is just that code, and understanding that code and using the revelations that have come through these amazing scholars of Kabbalah that are bringing everything together and are bringing everything into balance and harmony through the principle of the three-column system, i.e. of restriction, and not going with what the archetype wants. Restricting, you know, and I'm just going to talk about it quickly because this is something that we need to understand as part of this work. We can restrict in any kind of area of our lives to create a breakthrough in other parts of our lives. So if we restrict food, that's a way, you know, to create more light in another area. It doesn't need to be necessarily in the area of health, although it could also bring that. But that's an easy one to restrict for some. that is what the living light does and is, basically, right? So bringing that in to start the process of shadow work, and then eventually once we start the process of shadow work, it will lead us to the archetypes eventually, right? Like that's a direct sort of outcome of shadow work. It's like, okay, where am I being a bitch? Where am I, like where am I the queen? Where am I the nun? Where am I, like all of these different archetypes? Also, as Carolyn Miss is, talking about the archetypes. And I've just, like, over this past year been really like taking even those archetypes, like there's different levels of archetypes as well, right? Like, and we can make even many more of them, but when you go further up, let's say, you'll realize there's really two main archetypes, and those are the ones that the Bible is speaking about, and that is the basically the devil archetype and the Lilith archetype, and those are the two that are influencing us so much. And it's only through looking at our specific Lilith placements that we can see how it affects us, whether that is about fear of feeling secure, or not being able to take care of oneself, or however this Lilith expresses itself is what it, where we need to take control of this primal archetype, which is like, yeah, even beyond the popular archetypes, let's say. And that is, in this group, with this work that we are doing, I believe that part of what is coming out of it is helping people to see how they can take control of these archetypal forces through the planets as they're expressed in those Lilith placements, those 4 Lilith placements, which, in my humble understanding from all the synchronicities that I've been guided, have to do with the 4 exiles that the Zohar Archetypes is talking about, and the different levels of falling into density from being Adam and Eve, aka multidimensional godly beings, into more and more density through the ages, aka the precession of the equinox, to then come into where we are now, and where KHORA actually was the individual that was a soul as well, that is talked about in the Bible, and understanding the Bible really as a code for creation, as a code for our DNA, as another tool for DNA and to work with the gene keys. And I'm pretty certain that Richard Rudd sees it the same way, because he wouldn't refer to it in that way as well in certain of the gene keys, like the 11th gene key being the light of the Garden of Eden, or the light of Eden. It's like when a group of people are going against these archetypal forces, when we as a group are able to overcome, and through our unified field, through the unified chakra, through having done that practice, like we're all in that same field, so we have that awareness, and we have that and we know that this is what we kind of need to do. So then we create more resonance for more people to be able to do that. And we're creating this blueprint, which this was always about, creating the new blueprint for the heart-based reality. And we're living it. We're living it. Like we're literally, like, in this place of, yeah, the edge of existence, but we're fine. We're fine because we know that this is what we may have been asked to do. And it might not be as dramatic for everyone, but for some of it might be, with like not knowing how to pay the bills, or, you know, needing divine intervention to continue. And along the lines of like being on the edge of existence, or like really in like breaking through trauma or something like that, and being able to unleash the higher frequencies that are stored in our DNA. And if we can, you know, do this as a group and move through this process and know that this is what is going to help humanity, because Richard Rudd is always talking about the fact as well that when one person goes into the city consciousness, the divine gift consciousness, those frequencies in their DNA, then hundreds of others can go into their gift. And then when hundreds of others are going into their gifts, like, you know, as a collective, we're moving in that direction anyhow, with the planets, with the astrology of this time. And then they enable other people again to move into their city frequency because of these like hundreds monkey effects and everything. So if we as a whole can move into whatever we need to break through, into the gift frequency or into the city frequency, then we can actually change the whole collective. We can. This process of moving into those higher frequencies of our human design, of our gene keys, astrological imprints, and unleashing that highest potential, which we can also, and that brings me back to the Sabian symbols, which we can also see in our Sabian symbols, and with more definition maybe than necessarily in our astrology. And maybe not. I mean, I'm not an astrologer, so I always, you know, have to say that. But there's so many symbols that express this process of restriction, but that, you know, the interpretation right now that you can find on most of the Sabian symbols websites are not with that infusion of Kabbalistic wisdom, because they just haven't brought it together. But when you bring them together, you can see a way to deal with these archetypal forces through the symbols as well.